Well, hey everyone. Welcome to Leadership and Beyond and our featured question series. I've had a lot of requests over the months to go into certain topics in more depth. I've had a lot of requests about starting a more face-to-face podcast series, and I thought about bringing those two concepts together to field questions, go into new concepts, expand on concepts, and that's what this series is all about. My plan for it is to be relatively unscripted. I will have some notes that I will probably be looking at to be able to go into topics in more depth. But for the most part, it'll just me be here talking. So I put out there on the internet, on my blog, my website, the YouTube channel, what do you want me to talk about? Submit something. If it's picked, I'll go make a video about it. I got about 100 requests last week, so a lot to go through. And I went ahead and decided to pick the top one, like what was the most requested topic. And not shockingly, it was, can you just talk about the Paint It Red philosophy? Some people said it's not an overly difficult concept, but it'd be really nice to have you talk about it, maybe talk about kind of how it started. So I'm happy to do that today. So that's what this particular topic will be. The 7 pillars of the Paint It Red philosophy. So how did it start? It started back in my process improvement days. About 15, 20 years ago, I was touring an organization, and we came into a production line area, and the person giving me the tour was talking about how this production line was always running out of parts. They were looking to put a new system in. They were looking to add more people. They were looking to add part code systems. And I was kind of looking at the process, and I said, well, why don't you just paint the bins red? And the owner looked at me and said, you mean like literally? I said, yeah, just paint the bins red. Red just means replenish. Done. And what happened from that was kind of a string of more improvements, and more specifically, a metaphor that was created around solutions and decision making. And they called it Paint It Red. Like, how can we paint it red? That's how it was born. And as I went about my professional career, I began to use the term paint it red. How can we paint this red? How can we paint this red? So paint it red is really like a paint it red moment. When you land on an answer, when you find the best solution. Not necessarily a quick and overly simplified solution, but the right solution. Sometimes it is really quick, it's really simple and very obvious, even though some people might be trying to complicate it. In some situations, it takes a little more time and a little more planning and thinking. But you eventually will land on it, and the ultimate solution was, oh my gosh, that was so simple. So that's kind of where Paint It Red came from. And I don't want to spend a whole lot of time in this particular episode going into that story, but that's kind of how it started. So Paint It Red, the Paint It Red philosophy, is a framework for making decisions. We make decisions every day, small and big, and they affect our lives. So either if you're leading an organization, if you're managing a team, if you're running a household, your choices matter. Now, how do you make those decisions? Like, what's your structure for doing so? And the Paint It Red philosophy is the structure that I created for myself to help make better decisions in my professional life, in my personal life. So there are 7 pillars. I didn't necessarily create these concepts. I have a couple of keywords in there to kind of talk about the topic or the pillar at hand, but I didn't really create everything. I kind of put it all together, and it has done me very well in my life. And you will find that the pillars complement each other very well. Sometimes you can use 1 or 2 or 3 at a time to come to a solution for yourself. So that's the backstory to Paint It Red. So let's get into the 7 pillars. And I have them written down here just to make sure I go in the correct order because there was kind of a flow to them. So pillar 1. Pillar 1 is why we overcomplicate. As humans, we like to overcomplicate things. Just look around. Like sometimes we just wonder, why is someone doing something that they're doing? Why is a leader making a decision the way they are? They're really overcomplicating it. Well, we overcomplicate things based on our life experiences, things we learned in our childhood, things we've been exposed to, and they create behaviors, they create personalities. So there's like 7 different reasons why you overcomplicate, and I didn't create these 7. These are just research I've done on psychology and human behavior, and I'm not necessarily going to go into all of them because it's actually a pretty complex, dynamic framework. But here's a couple. Fear of failure. We often don't even make a decision because we're scared that it won't work out. We just say, oh, that's not going to work, or that's a bad idea, or they're never going to believe it. And we create these obstacles like immediately and stops us from moving forward. So you're overcomplicating the situation. We can overcomplicate situations for others as a leader if we don't have clear goals of what we want the team or the organization to accomplish. So like if they're ambiguous, they're kind of generalized, or they're not there at all, and then people kind of move along and do their job, we're creating complications for them. So unclear goals, one of the 7 for sure. Another one to bring up that I think we can all relate to is social norms. So we might not do the right thing for our situation, or we simply just make a bad decision because of what we have learned around us. Okay. One good example is, let's say, myths in investing, right? We hear things like, it's only for the wealthy. Rich people are greedy. You have to have a lot of money. Well, those are social norms. Like those are things that just created around us that we just start to believe, and they aren't necessarily true. So what happens is that we don't make the right decision for our finances. We make the wrong decisions and we overcomplicate the process. So that's the first pillar, overcomplication, and why we do it. And there's like 7. The next one is something I call the rake theory. And I created the rake theory, again, from my time in my process improvement days, where just notice that people create a lot of self-imposed obstacles on themselves. Like I'll take something really simple. So let's say someone is struggling to save money, but they like to go to Starbucks every day and get coffee, which is great. I go there all the time. But can they afford it? Like, can they actually afford that coffee every day? And they wonder why they can't save. It's a self-imposed obstacle. They basically threw a rake in front of themselves and they stepped on it and it smacked them in the head. That's the rake theory. Self-imposed obstacles. And we all do it. I've done it. I'm sure I still do it. I've seen others do it. In business, if a leader doesn't train his people properly and they start making mistakes, you threw a rake. Like you threw an obstacle in front of them and now they can't succeed. So it's figurative rakes. It's kind of like, what's the answer or goal I'm trying to get to? And am I throwing a bunch of rakes in my path and am I going to step on them? That's the rake theory. So that's pillar 2. Pillar 3 is the control bias. And this one is definitely one everyone can relate to. And it's that we like to focus on things we don't have a lot of influence in, that we can't make an impact on. Worrying about other people. Waiting on someone to make a decision and then getting upset that they're not making the decision. And not directing your attention towards, well, what can you actually control? Like, where is your area of influence? So in business, there's a lot of examples. One I could give is people complaining about customers. I wish they would order a certain way. I wish they would send in requests a certain way. Why won't they buy it? Why are they acting this way? And there's a lot of attention focused around that. Now, you need to understand why they may be acting a certain way, but then where you have the most influence is creating new marketing strategies, new engagement strategies, and using those as your point of focus and time and influence. So pillar 3 is just understanding, is learning how to not focus on things you can't control. Helps in the decision-making process quite a bit. The next one is the 5 closest people concept. Popularized by Jim Rohn, motivational speaker. Like you're the outcome of the average 5 people that you hang out with. Man, that's so true. It is so unbelievably true. The number itself is kind of irrelevant, but it's just the concept of who are you surrounding yourself with and by and next to. And their habits and their behaviors will become yours very slowly. So when you're having to make critical decisions in your life, critical decisions at work, you're being influenced by your inner circle. Okay, I call it the big 5. Who are they? And if you're around people that don't share a common goal, share possibly common interests, if you're a growth-minded person and they're a scarcity-minded person, you're going to be having some conflict, and the conflict's going to be in how you are making decisions. So who you surround yourself with, that is another pillar in the Paint It Red philosophy. It's a big one. The 5th one, which is probably one of my favorites, is Stoicism. Now, part of Stoicism is also not focusing on things you can't control. But Stoicism has a lot of other attributes that are really beneficial in making a decision. Being virtuous, being calm, actually embracing when you fail, embracing the bad things that come into your life and use them as learning experiences. The calmness and listening side to Stoicism for me has been incredibly valuable as a leader. Definitely as a person who used to run a household. My kids are moved on now. It has made a big difference in my decision making. I spend time thinking and reflecting on decisions that I made and how I can do them better in the future. At the moment of crisis or a overly dramatic situation, I tend to be calm and just listen and try to focus on what I can have the most influence on and respond to my team in a way that's professional and productive. I am by no means a expert or a lifelong practitioner of Stoicism. I'm learning as I go, but it's a pillar and it's a great philosophy. The 6th pillar is the process people product model. And this one is a model that I have used for a very long time, and it fit very well in my process improvement days, but it is applicable in so many aspects of business and in life. The process people product model is simply this. It's don't micromanage, and don't be like an elusive manager where you're not available. Create processes that people can work in. Create processes that have definable steps, a definable outcome, usually of quality, a definable time, and some level of accountability. It's a process. Then you develop and you mentor your people to work within those processes. What happens is the product naturally follows. Whatever the product is, it could be anything. It's kind of like set processes up, develop your people, and then step back and let them do their job. I have been developing processes for 25 years. Like I've been so engulfed in process improvement that I have seen this model work countless times. Like I can't even count anymore. It just works. It still requires the right process and people being developed properly, but it definitely works. So it is one of the pillars. Like it's a big one. And you will see as you learn this model over time that it is usable in so many aspects of business and definitely in your personal life. And the last pillar is minimalism. And like Stoicism, I'm not a lifelong practitioner. I Part of process improvement is creating the visual workplace, cleaning work areas, getting rid of things we don't need, getting down to the most smallest amount, minimalist amount of things we need to do the job. Definitely been involved in that on the professional level. What I'm getting at with the Paint It Red philosophy when it comes to decision making is decluttering your mind. And we are just bombarded constantly by external forces, emails and phones and the news and interaction with people. And to make the right decision, and sometimes it's a big decision. Like I tell leaders, listen, your job is to make 3 or 4 big decisions a year. Like that will have the biggest impact on your organization. They better be well thought through. And when you can learn to declutter your mind and focus on the task at hand, the decision to be made, it helps you make better decisions. So what I've noticed with this is it's important to create boundaries. It's important to learn the word no. It's important to find space where you think. And that's kind of how I've used the minimalist thinking as one of the pillars in the philosophy, is to get clarity in your thinking so you can make a better decision. So those are the 7 pillars. And I'm currently working on a book that's going to cover all of them in much more depth. But that's the framework. And it's going to be a work in process. Like you learn one, you learn the next one. You see how they complement each other. And as you go along in your decision-making processes at work or at home, is how can you paint it red, right? Like which pillar are you going to use to help make a better decision? And it's not perfection. It's really just progress. Even as the creator of the philosophy, I make mistakes all the time, but it's a fallback. And as you get better with it, you'll just find that your decision-making process is much more effective for yourself and those around you that you care about. So that's it. That's the 7 pillars of the Paint It Red philosophy. I really appreciate you listening to the first video in this series. I will be reviewing all of the requests that come in this week and come up with the next one for the next week. And I hope that you have a good day and make better decisions. So go paint it red. Thanks a lot.